You. Yeah, I was wondering if you could tell me a story that you told me about Jason's grandma. Yeah. Can you tell me a story?
Yep. What shall I call it? My aunt?
Okay.
My aunt, Mrs. Huerta, was my aunt. She visited New Mexico a lot of times and brought a lot of pictures back. She loved all her children. She did.
I believe you. And tell me about, like way back, when she first came to, how she went with the family, because her family couldn't take care of her and all that.
Like, my grandfather gave her away to these people that she worked with, these people in Belen. And so they're moving up to Austin, and my grandfather gave her away so she could take care of their kids. That's what happened.
Wow.
And she never went back home until my grandfather passed away.
And what was the name of the family she went with?
I don't remember.
I think it started with an L, maybe Langford?
Maybe.
And then what did she do when she went with the family?
Well, she took care of the kids, the family's kids. That's how she came to Austin.
Okay. And then that's when later on then she met her future husband.
Yeah, I don't know where she met him, because I didn't see him.
Yeah.
And I never saw my aunt after my grandfather passed away.
And how did you, what was the story again about you running into her? You didn't know, you somehow found out through a neighbor or something that you were related? Or what was that other story? Do you remember?
My grandfather's funeral, and that's where I met him.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't meet him. I was married already.
Yeah. Wow. And what was the story about when the family that you helped, wasn't there a family that you also helped out when you were younger? There was like a family and there was something helping with the linen and stuff. You helped with the linen, or I can't remember the story. You also helped out with some family, right? When you were young?
I lost my parents when I was my father died when I was 9 months old.
Oh,
and my mother died when I was 3 years old. My aunt Julia took care of my grandfather, my father's son.
Okay. Yeah. Huh? What? Oh, we're here.
You want to do it over there by that tape?
Oh, I guess so.
Better. I was telling them about in our family that there was this man Baca. He was a gunslinger, and they made him a sheriff around Belen, New Mexico.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah. The original Baca.
Yeah.
And I was telling them, I said, you would know that story better than I do,
The Antigo was, the Bacos there in Belen ran Belen.
Yes,
like
they
the
did.
Becas
Yes.
did.
Yeah, that's what I heard from. My mother was telling me this.
Yeah. The Beckers ran Belen because the Beckers were the ones that brought in money into Belen.
Yes, that's it. But she said that they made him sheriff afterward.
Yeah, sure.
Because
and his father was the superintendent, the first superintendent in grade school in Belen and Valencia County.
Yeah, I know they were strongly in politics.
Yeah.
In that area.
Strong in politics.
His name wasn't El Fuego Baca, was it? What's his name?
Yeah, Baca.
Oh, really?
Baca. There are a lot of Bacas in
Belen, there was a lot of Bacas.
And they are in Albuquerque too, aren't they?
Yeah, there's a lot of Bacas in New Mexico. But they all came from Spain.
Yeah.
My grandfather was Baca. My father's dad.
Yeah, they were all from
and
Spain.
they came from Spain.
Yeah.
And my grandfather, Valentin Montaño, came from Germany.
Germany. I thought he was from Frenchman.
I thought he was
He was
Italian.
German
He was
because he came with Becker.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Now I'm straight now.
Oh.
Yeah.
He came with the Beckers in Belen. And he used to tell us a story about these Beckers had a lot of money, and he used to take in the wheelbarrow out to the patio and air it because they had it in mothballs.
See? Yeah.
Did you hear that story?
No, that one I didn't hear. If I did, I've forgotten it. You know.
And my grandfather used to, that's how come he came with them. He was from Germany.
Yeah.
And my other grandfather was from Spain.
Yeah.
Now, is El Fego, is he related to the family then?
Not that I know, because I never knew all my family related to.
Uh-huh.
They got kind of scattered.
Yeah.
See, I never knew my Aunt Phyllis until I was already married. I had Betty when I knew my aunt. See, when she came back to Berlin, she came to her father's funeral.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
But she never came before then. Because she was hurt with my grandfather. Because he gave her away.
Oh, I see. I see.
It's a sad story.
Yeah, it is a sad story.
Very
Well,
sad.
in those days, you know, things did happen that were still sad.
Yeah, very sad. She was a happy, she always was happy. Your mother was always happy.
Yes, she was always a happy.
Well, her children
Person.
kept happy. Because she thought about all her children.
Yeah. That brings the truth.
So tell more stories about like the family and like some things that happened in the past and all.
Come near.
So tell some. Can you tell some more about like just some stories of the family that happened in the past and all? Just whatever just something that you like. Maybe your favorite story that you remember from your family.
Well, I just don't know anything exciting. Outside of the fact that my grandfather was blind on my mother's side. I mean, on my mother's side, my father's side. And he was also a Spaniard. He was blind, and I used to be his eyes. I used to take him everywhere that he wanted to go. Church about twice a week, on a Wednesday and on a Sunday. Sometimes twice on a Sunday. He used to tell me all kinds of stories about the older days. But I was kind of young, and it kind of escapes me.
You don't, but see, I didn't have nobody but just keep a record of my family, because I never was raised with all my mother's family. See, I was more raised with the Tafoya's family.
The Tafoyas.
Than the Montaños and the Baca.
I see.
It's interesting.
That was hard because you don't even know your own blood.
That's true. And you just don't keep a record at that time.
No, because there was no. Years ago, we didn't have like today. People have kids have a lot of luxury and a lot of understanding. Years ago, people didn't talk about nothing. My aunt died, my Aunt Julia died, and up to today, we can't find out about our grandmothers.
And that's the way it was in those days. You just didn't keep records of nothing.
And they didn't answer no questions. If you asked them any questions, they didn't answer. Your parents will they make you go out of the house whenever
Children should be
company.
It's just like it's not your business. You know?
Well, my grandfather used to say, well, children are only
So what about your brother Ben?
have to be seen,
Do
not
you guys have recollections of Ben?
That was
Ben,
Yeah.
That was then the norm.
Yeah, he left. My brother left about 56 years ago.
Why did he leave?
He got upset with my father for something. He just left. He said not to look for him because he's going to be gone. He never has come.
Now, did you find him on the internet?
Yes, actually, as a matter of fact, I found
know that?
one of his descendants on the internet, and I left a message. And they haven't called me back, but I did leave him. I do have a number. I have an address as well.
Where's it at?
Sacramento, California.
Yeah.
And it
Well,
is probably his son. I think it's Ben Jr.
Yeah, 'cause, he
Wow.
was at Sacramento.
Well, the story that my mother told me about the family was that when the revolution started and they were having problems down there, since my grandfather was Seferino Huerta and my grandmother was Hernandez, and when they married, where the Hernandez were was Villa, and the Huertas were, of course, with General Huerta. And there was conflict, and that was his cousin, so that started the whole conflict. So they decided to come to Texas, and that they left the family behind. And after that, he dressed the wife like a man, put pants and everything on her, so they would think they were two men instead of a man and wife. And that's how he got back down here on a freight train.
Wow.
And then he stayed here till finally he was working. He used to do mining work, so he said that he was working somewhere blasting. We used to blasting to make a foundation for some building or something in Austin, and it had blown up and it blinded him.
That was the capital.
The capital, yeah, that's right.
That was the first
and it was
capital.
a cave in.
The second one got burned. The first one, he was working there, and the explosion, he lost his sight. From
And
one eye.
he lost a thumb. A thumb or a finger, I forgot.
No,
in that
no,
explosion.
just his eyes.
Yeah, he had his thumb that was gone.
I don't even
In
know
his
about
hand,
that.
for sure.
No. Yeah, he did. He had a thumb missing. One of his thumbs was missing. I remember that because I used to visit him. When I was going to first grade, I used to live about a block away from the school, and I used to go visit him. But anyway, then he said that that finally my father was born, but they lived in San Marcos at the time. Then they moved to Austin, and after that, he kept saying he had to go get his family because his family was still in Mexico. And they said they had gone back to Mexico to pick up the family. And on the way back, that his two brothers, my mother said that his two brothers had died there because there was a plague going in Mexico. The only one that survived were the two his two sisters. And they survived, and they came. But
They
the two
died
brothers,
from
the two brothers died.
smallpox.
So yeah, smallpox. It was the
He
plague
lost
going in
two
Mexico.
sons in 1 week from smallpox.
Oh, man.
So then he crossed them across, and then he brought my Aunt Minnie and my Aunt Lupe.
And
then there were
my
just three
dad,
left.
Now, which was the aunt David Sr. told a story? If you can talk about her, the one that liked to drive real fast. And
That was Minnie.
that's Minnie.
She never married because when she was finally engaged to get married, my grandfather refused to let him get married. He refused to let. In them days, you had to do what your father said. So because of that, she started drinking. But at that time, she had her own business. She was running laundry. That's when she met her future husband, which was going to be her future husband. And she had her own laundry business.
yeah, and I used to run it for her.
You did. They said she used to have a big old, what was it, a panel truck? To move around
No,
and
she
pick
had
up the...
one of those big old cars.
Was that a
Yeah,
big old
big-
And
Buick?
she delivered the
Yeah.
clothes.
But then she got to where she started drinking more because she got stressed out because they wouldn't let her get married. And that's what got her in the road to becoming, an alcoholic, really.
She was just a little wine nectar.
No, she was not. So that's what ruined her life.
Well, she married when she got older.
No, she never married up.
Yeah.
Yeah, she married this
got married?
that
she got old.
that she came and introduced me to her, and that man just loved her. Oh.
She got married way old.
That was way late in life. I never knew that.
No, a lot of people didn't. Just me
I
and my
remember one
friend.
time she called me, said she feeling sick, so I run down there to take her to the hospital. And after a while, she said, "No, one thing, I'm feeling much better than where did go."
She didn't believe in
And that's her
doctors and
husband.
medicine.
Because I kind of lost the contact with the immediate family as I went into the service. 1 month after I was in the service, war was declared. And of course that just kept me in until after the war. So while I was overseas, I didn't know what was going on here. So I kind of lost a little time between that time from the family. You know, I just didn't know what was going on.
During the war in Europe.
Yeah.
You landed in Normandy, right?
Yeah, I was in Normandy.
My mother
how many
had
years were you
4 in the service, about 2, one in the Air Force, one in the regular Army.
I was in the Army and Air Force.
And
Two in the
Floyd
Navy.
and David were in the Navy. My sister was in the what?
You should have
West.
met Gilly then. He was in the
And
service.
Ben was in the
But he
CCP.
fought in the Pacific.
Ben was in the service too?
No, Sister Camp.
Oh.
Because I was there a long time and almost
And
every...
then my uncle Florence.
She was in Washington.
Yeah, he was in the first war.
Yeah, they were all in there.
Now, what was the story about Santa Fe, the land from Santa Fe?
Oh, the
was-
ranch. It's supposed to have been the ranch of my grandfather that was donated. Somebody was donated so the Santa Fe town could be started in order to get a community going. Because he's supposed to have had a ranch in Santa Fe. That's what my mother's story was telling me.
My mother, her father raised ponies for polo.
Polo ponies. You should know more of that than we do.
No, because see, I
And-
never saw them.
Oh, I see.
You know, the uncle and aunt that my mother lived with, he was jockey and in Mexico at one time. And let my mother tell you. And he remembers Pancho Villa and everybody like that. At least he did. He's deceased now. The other thing is, you know, you should have my mother tell you about when they took a trip from Los Lunas to Santa Fe. And it took them forever. And they used to have to go by buggy. And just to go from Los Lunas to Bernalillo was a half-a-day trip, and they'd stop there and have lunch. And later, when they had a car, when you take the highway to Santa Fe, you can see this one big ridge. It looks like it's straight up and down. That used to be the road, and they'd take the cars up there, and everybody had to get out of the car so that the car could continue and go up over the hill. And it'd go a ways, and then they'd put rocks under it and to stop it and let the engine cool off. And then they'd go a little bit more, and so it was like a 2-day trip to Santa Fe from Albuquerque, and now it takes us like 45 minutes.
And they call it Navajo Hill.
But the land was donated from our family
Yeah,
to the
for
city?
the church.
Yeah, in Santa Fe. But then mother said also that my grandfather raised horses for the cavalry during that time. And that's how he started a ranch in Albuquerque. He had started also a ranch in Albuquerque.
Yeah,
But
that was
he sold
my
horses
mother's
to
father.
the army, to the cavalry then. And that's how he started the second one. And then of course he had one in Roswell. He's supposed to have had a vineyard in Roswell, right? Was it supposed to have started a vineyard in Roswell?
I don't
Well,
know.
I never knew anything about that because see, I was away from my mother's family for a long time. See, I was raised with the Tafoya.
Well, La and Julia, the one that raised you, my grandfather, my mother's father, raised her and her sister.
Well, it sounds like that was common at
But
that
they all
time.
lived almost together.
Now there was another this Ernesto Chavez. He was, according to my mother, he was one of her cousins.
He was
He was in Santa
congressman
Fe.
from
Yeah,
New Mexico.
Chavez, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was a senator.
Chavez,
Yeah.
Senator
Yeah.
Chavez. Yeah.
That was my mother's cousin.
Yeah.
His first name was Dennis.
I thought it was her.
Senator Dennis Chavez.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Dennis, that's right. Yeah, Dennis. Yeah.
So what's the story about Pancho Villa then that she was referring to?
That I wouldn't know.
That was
I
my
didn't know
mother's
that one.
uncle that raised her.
Okay, so what was that about Pancho Villa?
He came to Colombia. He crossed into Colombia, right? The city, the little town.
I don't remember that story at all. You see, where I was raised in my my father's father was a man that was very she didn't talk too much. He said, children are supposed to be seen, not listen.
Yeah, that was the
their
norm
saying.
at that time.
Yeah, that was their saying. Children didn't talk, didn't ask questions. All they had to be just seen, not heard.
So how do you know about Pancho Villa then?
Well, I spend a lot of time with him. He taught me to drive a tractor when I was 7 years old because I would drive the tractor and he would stand on the back of it so that the discs would go into the ground because I was too little and too light. So I spent all my summers there, and I liked the outdoors, and he taught me how to ride a horse. And, I rode bareback down the Rio Grande all the way down to the Isleta Reservation when I was 7 and 8 years old.
Wow.
So,
Speaking of reservations, do you know anything about Indian lineage?
well, see, that's what I was going to get to. It was very bad to be an Indian then. And so no one would admit that they were Indian because if they did, they would put them on the reservation. And, there's so many stories, but like my mother's aunt that raised her was Isleta Indian. And till the day that she died, she would not admit that she was Indian. And she looked like a Pueblo Indian. Her looks proved that she was, but she would never admit it because when she was raised, it was very, very bad to be an Indian. It was better to be Spanish. And that's one of the reasons that a lot of the Pueblo Indians took Spanish surnames. And I could go on and on, but you want to hear their history because it's very interesting the way people perceived their heritage then and now. Now, we're very proud of our Indian heritage. For them, it was a very bad thing.
Dad, didn't you have some stories about our Indian heritage too? On the Huerta side?
Well, with the Huerta side, the grandfather was full-blooded Spaniard, and then my grandmother was Aztec and
She was Aztec, did you say?
What?
My grandmother, my father's mother, she was pure Mexican. And
She was what?
she was Mexican.
But I mean, she was half
Indian.
Spaniard and half Indian. You
No,
guys,
she
that's what made you
no
Mexican.
Indian.
That's what made you Mexican.
And our grandmother, my mom and his wife was captain Indian from the family.
Oh, yes.
And my other grandmother was the same thing.
My,
They married two Indians.
I see. In those days, it was the settlers
Yeah,
that married them.
yeah.
Now, what happened? Was that the story about someone who was captured actually and forced to marry a German man? Is that what that was?
No, they weren't forced, but then they just, I guess they got together and both of my grandfathers married captive Indians.
I see. Captive Indian. What does that mean?
They were captured.
Oh.
See, they didn't have a tribe. They were captured from different tribes. So they never gave them a tribe.
That's too bad. So, and what's the story about the Huertas? They were on the side of Pancho Villa, so when they left
that was divided
Mexico.
between the Huertas and the Hernandez, because the Huerta married the Hernandez, and the Hernandez, the brother of my grandmother, was a captain in Villa's army, and his job was to come looking for reservists and shoot them and then go back to Villa. And every time he came into town, he would check the thing. Well, the main thing about it was that it was bad for both of them because he had it in for my grandfather, and then, of course, General Huerta had it in for my grandmother. So they decided the best thing to do is leave. There was no way they were going to split the family up, so they decided to leave. And they left their children with some friends, and they would say they would come back, which eventually they did. But the thing about it is the two uncles died, two aunts survived. Because the women are mostly pretty well more stronger than men when it comes to the plagues and stuff like that. It's always been. So I figure that's what happened. But the best sad thing about it is that they were buried wherever they died. They rode back from Mexico to the United States.
Wow.
So you can never tell where they're at.
Wow.
Well, that was a pretty bad thing about that.
That's the way we do things.
They say wherever they died, that's where they're buried.
And what was the part about the Louisiana Purchase territory?
Oh, that's probably from the ancestors of my mother's side. Because they were French when they originated from that part. Because in that time, I think the French were colonized part of Canada anyway. And that's where they had the Louisiana Purchase was purchased from the French. It belonged to the French. But when that happened, a lot of the original French were there. Well, they moved anywhere in the country then, but it was part of the United States.
They moved to Texas and they moved to Mexico.
But my grandfather moved into, well, it wasn't my grandfather, it was my great-grandfather moved into New Mexico. That's how the story was. That's what my mother said. That her great-grandfather came into New Mexico and took over certain parts of land. He said he even had to fight Indians to keep it.
And is he the one that then raised ponies?
No, that was his son that raised ponies.
Oh.
But he's the one that settled that part and took over the part in Santa Fe. That's where he settled out in Santa Fe and took that section of land there. And then, of course, when he died, my grandfather took over.
Yeah.
But in his time, there was still wild country there, so he was still fighting into them.
Now, what?
Way back there.
See, my mother always told me that they had originated. Her great-grandfather had originated from the French side, from the Louisiana Purchase. They said they came from there and went into New Mexico. Because the Louisiana Purchase was part. Right, it bordered into the New Mexico, around Arkansas and around that area. So that's how that whole thing started.
Okay.
But it's still wild country. You could just go and take whatever you want.
Yeah.
Of course, it belonged to the Indians, but everybody was taken away from him.
It's
So anyway,
amazing.
he took his chunk, and he still had to fight Indians. And he said that the whole HUD had to be made was where you could seal it up and just have holes enough to shoot out. And he said that sometimes that the Indian would try to come down to the chimney to get into the house, and they would have to set fire to the thing, and they were coming down. That's how bad it was.
Crazy.
The older days.
See, my grandfather used to tell that to my mother. That's where she got all this. And then she told me also that my grandfather, that after he got well, after that blast and everything ruined his life, that he could see again. But they told him not to stand in the sun.
Not
But he
to go
always
to
wanted to go
Mexico
back to
and put
Mexico.
those big heads.
Yeah, but he always wanted to go back to Mexico. He always said he always wanted to go back to his
He
country.
did go back.
Yeah, but once he went
He had a
across,
restaurant in Mexico.
but when he went to the border, is that Mama said that he stood out there and waited for him to, when he was getting ready to cross across the border, he went back to go to sleep. Went to sleep, and then he slept where the sun was shining in his eyes, and it blinded him again. He said after that he never could see again. But they were real tender still.
I knew the doctor that operated on him. He said he had fixed his eyes, and he told him not to go back to Mexico and wear those big heavy heads. And he did. So he had already lost one eye, but he had
one he could see.
He could see with the other eye. And he told me that I told him not to do that. He said, so we get blind again. This doctor was the boyfriend of a nurse that I worked for. So he knew all of that.
Yeah.
So he tried to save his
So it was the idea that he stood up. What, did he wear the right hat?
Yeah, it was.
He let the sun was.
That's too bad. You don't wear the right hat.
That's why I guess it shaded his eyes, right?
He went back to Mexico and took all his family. He had a restaurant in Leon, Guanajuato. No, not Leon, Durango. And he stayed there a while. Then he came back to United States, and he never did like to. See, I was raised by my aunt and my grandfather, and he wanted to go back to Mexico. He used to tell me stories about Mexico. Mexico had the best food, the best thing, and he never did go back. And
Well, he tried to
He
go back.
really fit. He didn't learn how to talk English because he didn't want to. He wanted to Spanish. You know that kind of.
And he said that when he died, make sure to point his head toward Mexico. And that's what Dad did. I remember when he died.
He was a real good. He thought if he would talk about Mexico, he'd be hurting this nation.
Mr. Huerta Sr., what did he do for your father? What did he do for a living? Your father? Yeah.
He did almost everything.
He was a gardener.
He did gardener work, then he also did rock work.
He could
Did rock work.
he was like a landscape.
Okay.
Because we had that picture here where he made that fence over there. They took pictures of it. I got a picture in there.
He would make this brick things, and he was wonderful with flowers.
But then he drove, but the main thing, Dad, remember when Dad used to drive a truck, he had a fruit stand, he had his own business.
Oh, that was long.
And he used to deliver fruits to all the H-E-B supermarkets for a while there. What was called supermarket there, the little store they were big enough to have that. And then he had his own place in 7th Street. There used to be a marketplace where you could buy stalls and put on, sell fruit, and he brought fruit from the valley. And when he took people to the valley, he'd pick up the fruit and bring it back. But he also took people from here to work at the valley and charged so much for each person to take them down to the valley to do cotton picking or harvest fruit or whatever. Then on the way back, he'd bring fruit.
But
he had a pretty good business going too, didn't he?
At last, he was just a landscaper and a gardener. All these rich people would hire him to fix their yard and flowers.
He was always in small business.
Miss Candelas, what about your uncle, the one that went blind working in the state capitol or something like that?
That was my grandfather.
That was who?
Your grandfather?
That was your grandfather? What did he do, or what's the story on that?
I think she just told that story.
She's already told me.
She did. She already told that actually about 15 minutes ago.
Oh, it is?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
But see, Dad always had a business going. He always had a business going. When we were little, he always had a business.
Yeah, and I don't love it.
Because I remember he'd take Frank and Licho. You used to drive that truck for him, didn't you?
Yeah, I drove that truck. I was.
They used to have him in. They worked with my
I was
dad.
about
He used to go break
15 years old and I was driving a truck already.
Oh, we went to Oklahoma City, remember?
What?
Went to Oklahoma, Dick Onions, remember that? Me and you
He
and
make
Randy.
you sell the apples
I
and
remember that.
sweet potatoes.
Yeah,
Remember that?
all kinds of vegetables and fruits. We used to go out to the farms and buy right
David
from
were
the
real
farm.
small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said he used to always buy stuff right off the farm. He'd go get a load of watermelons and dump them there himself and get the ones he wanted. And they bring them back and sell them, and then take off and go back again.
Yeah.
And I remember he used to say that you and Necho, you and David and Frank used to go work. And that Ben never wanted to go. He didn't want to work. He said, I gotta get my hands dirty. Ben didn't care too much for hard work.
And him and my grandfather would go to San Antonio to get vegetables. And I was the oldest in my family, and that would take me so I could do the paperwork for him. And he had one of these trucks that can stop sometimes, and I go out there and help him. He said, "No, you go get in the back of the truck, you're a girl." And I said, "Well, that's the only thing we had." He had none of these boys that were too small. So he was always doing. He had such a big family.
Yeah.
He died so young.
Yeah.
And
But see, that
he
was
was
always
such a good father.
That was always able to raise us all perfect. And we always tell us never to take anything unless we work for it, never to steal, always obey the law, and always get a good education. And when we say we're going to quit and go to work, say, you're going to go to school. You're not gonna be like me and not get the education, not get a good job. So you go to school. So he forced us to go to school. He tell us. And every now and then when we behave, he turn around and give us a good whipping to let us know that he could whip us. But I think the main thing about it, the way my father raised me, is that I never wanted to disappoint him in any way. I didn't care about the whippings. I could take the whipping, but the idea for me to hurt him, there's no way that I could do that. So I would never think about stealing. I always thought about a good education and a lot of work all the time. So I think it was about the best that you could possibly have. And of course, Mama was just as good as far as the love and the tenderness she gave us all the time. So she brought us up pretty good. None of us were ever bad. We were always obeyed the law, always worked, and always tried to get a good education.
And obey your big sister.
That's right. And always respect the elders.
I was always
That's better.
In those days, you better.
He was real good. The one that was real hard-headed was David.
David.
Yeah, David was hard.
Oh.
But he was good though.
Yeah. Well, David was the one that came back from the ark, from the service, and he said, you're not gonna live in a rent house no more. We're buying a house, and I'm gonna put the down payment. That's where he bought the house in South Florida. And it's still there. We still own it. It was David that put the money down. He moved him out of the east side over there. He said, we're not gonna live here no more. We're gonna buy you a house. And David went up there and put the payment. We got him a good house, and even helped him all the way until he got married.
They were all good sons.
But David was real smart. He was shrewd. I mean, anything he do, he would do perfect. I don't care what he tried to learn, he learned it perfect.
Yeah, David was
smart. He could learn anything. He was a skill in any profession he took. He was a jack of all trades and a master of all.
I agree.
He was.
He was brilliant. David was real smart.
Anything he put his mind to. He was even a barber.
But it's funny that I think now about that. The older I get, the smarter my father gets. You know, I look back and I say, God, I can't believe that was that smart. And the older I get, the smarter he gets. I said, man, I remember I used to argue some dumb arguments with him. You know? I thought I knew everything when I was about 16 or 17.
Well,
and he would just smile when I would argue with him.
Person at
I was
17
making a
thinks you
fool of
know
myself.
everything.
But I think the main thing that it was that we didn't never want to hurt Dad in any way. That's what we all never did anything wrong. None of us. I don't think none of us ever did anything wrong. If we thought if we were going to hurt our father, I think it would hurt us more than anything else. He could whip us all he wanted. But the idea of hurting was what the biggest thing that we didn't want to do. I guess we all loved him so well. I mean, Dad was the greatest person we ever did. Everybody had heroes. He was the only hero I ever had.
That's good. That's a nice story.
He was. Everybody, he was my only hero all my life, till this very day.
That's a very good memory. Very
He was such a great man. I mean, he was so smart. Anytime I had a problem, he could get me right out of it. That's what amazed me now. You know?
Well, you was the youngest.
It's nice.
But he stayed
So I
there with his
figured
boys.
The only way I could pay him back is by taking good care of my kids.
He didn't let my mother work.
Never. That's right. He would never let mother work. He said he'd rather work 2 jobs than burn it.
Yeah, that was true.
Anybody want to ask anything, Victor?
Well, we all pitched in and worked.
Yeah, every one of us, right?
Every one of us, yeah.
And you know the thing about it, that every time we worked, we never complained about giving half of our wages to gas.
No, we never
I remember when everybody was working, I was the last one on the pole. I was the youngest, so I was just eager to get a job so I could pay half of my wages to my dad. I always wanted that. I wanted to be just like the rest of them. Because every time each one of us worked, we give him half of the pay. He didn't have to ask for it.
Well, one time he got sick, and he had a truck, and he was going to work for the city, but he couldn't drive it. So I went and got a hold of a truck. It had nothing on it, just the engine and the frame. I had to put a body on that thing, and I had to drive that truck with an apple box or seat. And I went and got this contract at the city, and I drove that truck, laying gravel on the road. I was working for about a month. Then, when it came for the city to pay, they said they'd pay the truck, but it said we can't pay you because you're underage, and you can't pay somebody underage, you know, as an employee. And we kind of argued about that, and I said, well, if you're going to pay the truck, you know, it can't go by itself. Somebody's got to drive that thing, you know. And that was my point. And well, they finally agreed, and they paid it. They paid it. Yeah, they paid it.
The battery's going dead now,
Yeah,
so.
I was too young to work. I was there. They didn't know that I'd been working all this time.
Is it about over?
Yeah. just to let y'all know.
Say bye and smile.
Yeah, that's about it for the battery, so. But thank y'all, and I enjoyed hearing all those stories. I love them.
Boring.
Huh?
You
No!
start talking about it.
Are you crazy? It's not boring at all. I love it.
That's the way things were. That's the thing. Can't change that.
Who made that little garage or like shed or roof at Grandma Alice's house that's made out of wood?
Dad did
pine?
that. Dad did that. And
Mr.
even
Huerta
that concrete,
seen?
he poured that himself.
Oh, okay. Did y'all help with that?
No,
Oh,
that's
They
my
were
thing.
married and
See,
went
no,
to the
it wasn't that.
service.
I went to school. When I got out of school, went to work. We all went to work right after school.
I
So,
was in there for
and you was in the service, right? But I remember as soon as I got out of school, I went straight to work. I worked till about 9 o'clock or 10. Then I come and have to study for about an hour. But I went to work so I could help him. So my dad would do that whenever when he come in from work, he'd go work a little at a time and do that. That's how he built that little cabin.
Oh, they didn't
That was
plant
neat.
all those
It's all made out of
flowers.
wood.
Yeah, to take care of the flowers.
My mother didn't carry all work. I worked.
That's cool. Yeah, that was
All right, well, thank y'all. That was great. I loved it. I'm just going to record a few seconds of it.
Brandon, go away.
Are you gonna finish those?
Oh, that's the oldest and that's the youngest.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking that would be coming in.
No, this is the youngest. Where's Venus?
Okay, cool. But
I'm a big movie star, and I'm gonna put my hand on your camera.
it's about to run out of juice. I'm just trying to get whatever I can real quick. Feel bad about audio.